Hello and welcome to 310 to Left, episode number 2. They said it wouldn't last. Welcome, everyone. Tom Karen along with Alex Speier. I think we've already gone twice as long with this as anybody expected, Alex, so congratulations.
Yes, the 310 train keeps on steaming, Tom.
It is an unstoppable locomotive. We are at Fenway Park. I'm here in the Nesson studio, and back there, I'm pointing the wrong way. It's a video podcast. I should have had this. There you go. That's Alex up there, right about there. I'm crushing your head. Do you remember that? Anyway,
That hurt.
the homestand. Yeah, sorry. The homestand is wrapped up. Disappointing end, but they take two series. They take 2 out of 3 from the Cubs, 2 out of 3 from the Giants, get closer to 500 at home. What was different this time? Obviously, the offense that wasn't there the first homestand showed up this homestand. What'd you like most about this homestand, Alex?
I mean, it's I can't believe, honestly, I am surprised genuinely that the Red Sox have been able to withstand this seemingly endless number of injuries in the way that they have. It's one thing for one side of the ball to be running short. We all thought that the depth was lacking entering the season, and that with each injury, with Giolito, with Pivetta, with Bayo, you keep thinking, they're going to be kind of in trouble withstanding that on the pitching side. They haven't been. They've remained as good as any pitching staff, as good as any team in preventing runs. And then, frankly, the same has been true as we've watched Trevor Story go, as we've watched Trevor Story get lost for the season, as we have watched, Tristan Casas now being lost for the next 2 months. Rafael Devers has missed a third of games. Tyler O'Neill, off to this great start, has missed a quarter of games. We have yet to see Vaughn Grissom. And yet, so that we're talking about 5 of the 9 regulars who haven't been in the lineup for significant chunks of what we've seen thus far. And yet the offense is getting better. They have an approach, and there are guys like Connor Wong who are maximizing it.
I remember sitting with you at spring training talking about the season ahead, and you were talking about the impact Garrett Cooper and Dominic Smith and Zach Short would all have on this team, because that's how locked in you are on things. I don't remember in recent times a carousel of players coming in from outside the organization, right? You might see this with players being called up, but these are guys who they're going to grab, and they all, by and large, fit a certain profile, right? They're all veterans who have a few years of experience, have been through some stuff. And I feel, and I wonder if you agree, that that's as important as what they can do on the field. I mean, they need to be able to play. They wouldn't be in the major leagues if they can't. But this team is so young, and with the injuries you said, they need a little bit of professionalism. They need a little bit of calm demeanor here. You don't want another 3 guys coming up to major league debuts on this roster right now, do you?
Yeah, you really do need to have some professional at-bats, just guys who are able to, even if regardless of the result, have that kind of, have a mature approach, know what they're doing, not be kind of not be a hole in the lineup who you can wipe out with 3 pitches, right? The Red Sox have had a lot of youth in their lineup thus far this season. Certainly with Cedar Rafaela, you're kind of going to be riding a roller coaster based on him trying to get his footing in the big leagues, and then some other guys, Emmanuel Valdez at times, others. Obviously, Valdez has been optioned, but they were going to be riding a bit of a roller coaster. Whereas the guys who they are adding now, the Garrett Coopers and the Dom Smiths, the idea is that you're able to have guys who, even if the outcome isn't what you want it to be, they're still able to put together a good game plan against an opposing pitcher and make it work. And thus, you're kind of setting up the rest of your lineup and having an integrated team that isn't just falling apart.
The defense has been much improved. We know that. And I think I have to go back and check, but in my mind, I think they're 6-3 when Cedar Rafaela plays the entire game at short. And we talked all about that before. Why don't they move him to short? They finally did. Was it as simple as that? I mean, Valdez, who got sent down, has been much better defensively at second base than certainly he was a year ago. We've seen some other guys. Ref Snyder returns. He helps the outfield, but the outfield's been really good by and large defensively. How much of this hinges on Rafaela at shortstop right now?
A ton, right? I think that their ideal scenario, the best usage of Cedar Rafaela as a defensive player is as a center fielder. That's, I think, where there's a clear Gold Glove profile. It was interesting a couple of years ago, talking to Darren Fenster, who used to be the Red Sox infield coordinator. And at the time he said, I see Cedar Rafaela as being a Gold Glove level talent right now. If he were to develop at shortstop, I think that there's a chance that he could get to a similar point. but he hasn't had the reps, but he's still really, really good. Like the upside, the edge of range plays still are exceptional for him there. He's not the same impact there, but this is not a vacuum. You have to account for what's going on around you, how the parts fit together. And in this case, the Red Sox didn't have a stabilizing force at shortstop once Trevor Story went down. David Hamilton struggled to be consistent. We've talked about the impact that unearned runs have had on winning and losing for this team, where the offense isn't necessarily going to be robust every night. And so having a Rafaela to kind of lock things down on the infield, just give a little bit of stability. The group that they have in the outfield, I don't think that you have a gold glover out there, but you have 3 quality guys out there on most nights. And so they've been stable behind a very good pitching staff.
All right, let's move off the field into the front office. You had a really interesting piece earlier this week. The Sportsology Group, an external company, has been brought in to do an audit of baseball operations. And for people who don't understand, like I spoke before baseball operations last year, it's 300 people. It is a massive, massive organization. They all are now. But I think I was stunned to see just how many people are under the umbrella of baseball operations. So you can understand a new chief baseball officer, Craig Breslow, coming in to get this under control and getting a better fix for what's going on. But I think a lot of eyebrows are raised when you say they're bringing in an outside group. Tell us a little more about what this is. What is Sportsology Group going to do here?
Yeah, it is you're absolutely right in terms of talking about the growth of front offices. And in fact, you're not the only one who's shocked. Last year, the Red Sox had their first organization-wide meetings in about 7 years, I think. And the people who had taken part in it couldn't believe how much bigger the operation was when you saw everyone in the organization all assembled in one place. I think it was at the Hotel Commonwealth. And it was 300 people, which was probably at least, I think, 100 more than had been the case back in 2016 when they had the previous ones. A lot of new jobs, a lot of new areas. And so, Craig Breslow in the interview process said that he wanted to kind of wrap his arms around the organization and understand all of the nooks and crannies. The problem is that could be a very time-consuming undertaking, particularly for someone who is, number one, getting his own first taste of being a head of baseball operations. Number 2 is new into the organization. And number 3, kind of working in a front office on a full-time basis for the first time, right? He had been remote when he was with the Cubs. And so in his eyes, he wanted to be able to accelerate the process of fully understanding what everyone is doing in the Red Sox organization and whether or not what they're doing is efficient and contributes to the success contributes tangibly to the success of the organization. So he thought that he would be able to accelerate that process by hiring an outside consulting firm, in this case Sportsology, which has worked, as you discussed with Sam Kennedy yesterday, with Liverpool Football Club. They've also worked with a number of NBA teams, NFL teams. I'm unaware of whether or not they've worked with a baseball team before, but the hope on the part of the Red Sox is that what they have found about well-functioning organizations, highly functioning organizations, translates across sports.
It'll be interesting to see what comes of this. Interesting to see, and if we hear any sort of people on pins and needles, right? Because if they came to audit Nesson, I'd be nervous because once they caught an act of how little I do around here, I'd be in trouble. But there is always going to be some angst, right? When you're getting an external company to come look at what you do.
Yeah, and Breslow was pretty candid about acknowledging that fact, but also noting that he himself was probably going to cause some discomfort. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Red Sox decided that things had gotten to an extreme enough point in terms of them being disappointed with the results that they had been achieving that they fired Chaim Bloom last fall and went through a search process and replaced him. So Breslow himself said, look, number 1, I'm still settling in. Number 2, I'm probably a source of the fact that they have made this change. Means that some people are probably still figuring out how comfortable they can be with me. And Breslow, again, talked about the idea that this consulting project could help to accelerate them figuring out exactly who's going to be part of the organization moving forward and what shape the organization will take moving forward a little faster than might be the case without them.
No doubt about that. And expose some blind spots that people internally might have. Okay. Let's get to our guest today. I'll throw it to the interview. We had Zack Kelly on, and in full disclosure, Zack Kelly came on between his 2 appearances of the Giants series. He was scoreless in his first appearance. We had him on the next day, yesterday as we talk now, and then he came up today and gave up 3 consecutive singles in the 7th inning and was the losing pitcher. So we don't talk about that in full disclosure, but this is really more about how Zack Kelly, like many of the pitchers on this staff, took this offseason to reinvent himself, change what he throws, how he throws it, in order to make himself a better pitcher. I thought it was a fascinating conversation. I hope you agree. Here's Zack Kelly on 310 to Left. Well, this is a new endeavor, the 310 to Left podcast, and I feel no Red Sox podcast can become official until Zack Kelly has appeared on it. He has been on just about every podcast you could imagine, and it's been fun watching his journey over the last couple of years. We also are here to sort of hold his hand now that the Rangers have swept the Capitals, but we'll get to hockey in a little bit, one thing at a time. Let's start with baseball. Zach, you're back, and you're pitching great with the Red Sox. How's it going?
Good. How we doing?
Doing great, thanks. Can't speak for
Zach,
Alex. Alex, how you doing?
I'm terrific. I'm super excited to be here with both of you, Zach. I'm with Tom. We are now an official podcast now that we've had you on. So thanks for joining.
We love it. We love it. Hey, it's always it's fun talking baseball and other stuff.
So let's talk baseball. Let's start with, you didn't only have to come back from the injury in spring training, but you've kind of reinvented yourself here. And that was, by design. You talked about that early on in spring training and what you wanted to do. And obviously the results, it's early, but the results are great. Talk a little about your mindset coming into this season. And you got back at the end last year, which I know was important for you. But where did this come from? Sort of the mindset and the whole philosophy that I'm going to tweak almost everything here and come back a whole new guy.
Yeah, I mean, literally, like you said, everything. I think it kind of dates back to last year, just obviously with the nerve thing that I had and having a 4-month vacation in the season. And, I was glad I get to come back. I was glad I get to kind of, put the bow on that whole thing. But just kind of heading into the offseason, and I decided, like, a lot of this reflection throughout the summer last year, like, all right, this is where I'm at. Like, this is what my stuff is. And pretty much what it came down to is I didn't really think it was sustainable to be successful long term. And so you just kind of look at and see where the game is going. And you got guys that are able to throw really good breaking balls, really good changeups. And the velo every year is just consistently going up. And so it's like, all right, well, what do I need to do to get to where some of these guys are and the way the game is going, and just to be able to put myself kind of in that spot where I felt like it was, attainable to be successful long term. And so that the changeup has kind of always been there, but I just didn't feel like I was really competitive to righties as much as I was lefties, like the kind of slider cutter hybrid thing that I had. It was a good contact pitch, but it wasn't really a good swing and miss pitch. And so my fastball, the profile on it wasn't very good. Had way too much horizontal to be a four seam, and but it was good enough, but it wasn't great. And so I think that was kind of the development of the sweeper, just to be a little bit more competitive and be able to navigate at-bats for right-handers a little bit better. The changeup has always kind of been there for me. And so I think just being able to have a more complete arsenal and not being so limited to left-handed versus right-handed, and just being able to feel like I can go get swing and misses to each of them, and just, if not a swing and miss, just some weak contact. And so I didn't really know exactly what everything was gonna look like come the season during the off season. But I'm happy with where it's at. Happy with the results that we've gotten so far.
You decided on your own, hey, like, this is the pitcher that I'm going to be, because I think we've seen changes across the board with Red Sox pitchers this year. Almost all of them have been really effective thus far. But I think that there's been a large assumption that Andrew Bailey, Justin Willard, Craig Breslow, like, there were members of the quote unquote pitching department had Zoom meetings over the course of the offseason with everyone on the 40-man roster, and kind of at that time outlined goals for guys. So had you already set your goals even before that meeting, or did that conversation kind of reshape it as, okay, you had a 5.5 inch, you had a slider with 5.5 inches of horizontal break last year. Let's add a foot to it and really see it go into the other batter's box.
Kind of not really. Just because I did a lot of work with Tread Athletics this offseason, and so I was able to get a lot of data from them and be able to share that with our pitching department, and they were happy with where the sweeper was going. And I think the biggest change, I guess, data that they gave me was with my changeup, like the vert was over 3, the ex wobo was like almost triple if it was under 3. And so like just saying or trying to figure out how to consistently get the vertical on my changeup under that number. But I ended up flipping the seam orientation on it. So going from a 4-seam grip to getting to a 2-seam grip allows me to do that a little bit better. So, but mainly that, and I think our goal with the sweeper was we were only trying to get about 10 to 12 inches and at a certain velo, and like fortunately I've been able to throw a little bit bigger at that same velo, and so I think just a combination of that and just having a little bit better of a fastball profile, just doing a lot of long toss with that and kind of cleaning up the mechanics a little bit has helped that. And so just really feel good with all 4 of my pitches and kind of how they've complemented each other so far, I guess.
Zach, I'm fascinated by the process that you guys go through when you do it. So take us into the lab, because like the closest thing I can think of is me on the driving range, right? Like you tried this grip and now I'm blasting it all over the place, right? And either I panic and say, no, I'm going to go back and just be the lousy 18 handicap I was with the old grip, or I'm going to commit to this. So, I mean, are you throwing and then looking and then throwing again, or is it a full session? Then you go back and look at the data. Like how immediate are you looking for feedback as you go through this process?
Sometimes that gets me in trouble. Sometimes I pay too much attention to it. So I remember in spring training, I've never been a great bullpen thrower anyway. I don't know why. I can't throw very hard for whatever reason. The adrenaline's out there. But like we have the TrackMan with all the data and the TV hooked up to it behind us, and I remember like just being so caught up in it sometimes. And in spring training, I'd been throwing terrible bullpens because all I cared about was what the TrackMan number said. And one day I go to throw my bullpen and they turn it off for me, and then it was the best bullpen I had all spring training. And then they turned the TV on, and all the numbers were exactly the same as they had been. So sometimes I think I get a little bit too caught up in it. But I think some guys like to sit there and see it and kind of make adjustments pitch to pitch. But sometimes I fall into a habit of trying to make it too good when I can see it. So maybe not the best for everybody.
It is pretty crazy though. Like you have this iterative process now, right? Where you're like, oh, I need to get like my changeup diving more than 3 inches, right? Like, and I believe like you've pulled off this neat little trick where you're throwing your changeup harder this year, and yet it has 3 more inches of sink to it. So like we're talking about more than the height of a baseball. That seems like a pretty good formula for going from like hitting either hitting a barrel or hitting the bottom, like, or getting just below the barrel, to getting below the bat and getting a swing and miss. Like, is this whole process crazy to you that like, this kind of lab-based, whether it's a tread, whether it's those bullpen sessions where you're like, okay, let's change the seam orientation, and all of a sudden, like, you are getting this much more movement? Like, does it kind of blow your mind that baseball is in this place right now?
Yeah, it's some of it still doesn't like make sense to me, but like, you can sit there and look at a video and like look at a release point and just like I remember when we were at Tread, and so I had a 4-seam grip, but the way I was turning the ball over was giving me 2-seam spin, so that's what was keeping like pushing the ball up. And so they're like, hey, let's just try to flip to a 2-seam grip and get the same effect where we're getting 4-seam spin, right? And so did that. and it was like night and day difference. And the vert went from just pitch to pitch, went from like +10 to -6. Like there's crazy stuff like that. But like that's just like where we're at as a game now. There's so much information available, and there's so much technology available, and just I don't really know I don't know where it stops. I don't know where the limit is, right? Like we just keep going, and every year you're like, oh, this is as good as we're gonna get, and then the next year it's guys are even better, stuff is even better, and so I think that's just the way the game is going, and like I said, I don't really know where the limit is when it's going to stop.
So do you feel like pitchers have a cheat code now? Like, how do hitters catch up? Like, you guys are able to make. Pitchers are so much on offense right now, right? Like, hitters are so defensive right now because stuff is so good and the shapes are so precise. Where do you think the game's balance is at?
No, all the rules are against us. We're on a clock. We can't step off. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I mean, I always think pitchers are going to kind of be in the driver's seat. I mean, I think hitting is a little bit harder than pitching. But I mean, I think there's a give and a take, right? Like it just depends. I mean, it was the sticky stuff. They took that, and then now it's like, all right, well, maybe now the stuff is going to go down. Well, the stuff has probably gotten a little bit better, if we're being honest. So it's like, was it really that, or was it just there's a lot more technology available for pitchers than there are hitters? And I mean, I think teams are being able to kind of get guys and do what they want with them, and then it's like, they get to a certain point. It's like, all right, we need a guy in our bullpen that does X, Y, and Z. Let's go call him up. And so, like, you got guys like, let's just take our bullpen for example. I don't think you have a single guy in our bullpen that's very much like another guy. And so it's like every guy you bring out there is throwing something different from a different slot. Which, I mean, that's hard to hit against, I would think. I don't know. I'm not a hitter, but I would imagine. So I think there's just so much more variability in pitching than there is hitting. So I think that's the tough part.
And towards that end, we were talking about it last night. Lenny DiNardo was saying on the air that you come in, you still throw, and your velo's actually gone up on the four-seamer, right? I mean, you're still throwing that 40% of the time, which on this team is somewhat outrageous, right? You throw four-seam fastballs on a staff that doesn't throw many of those. But that really, I mean, you come in, you still are able to use that as a weapon to attack hitters, right? And I think that stands out in this bullpen.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said earlier, like last year, I threw very much of a four-seam sinker. Like it wasn't very good. But I think just kind of getting behind the ball a little bit more and being able to long toss a lot this offseason. Obviously, the velos helped. The vertical on my fastball is still pretty average. Maybe a tick above league average, but when I throw it up in the zone, the approach angle lets it play a little bit better, and so I think it's been able to work well for me and just kind of complement the horizontal separation that I have, like with the changeup and the sweeper, and it just kind of makes it a little bit harder to get to. But let's take last night an example. You got Cooper coming in throwing sinkers. You got Weiser coming in throwing sliders that move 2 feet to the left, and then I come in and throwing a lot of changeups, and then you got Slayton coming in throwing 97. Like, good luck. It's just everybody in that bullpen is just so much different, and it's hard to prepare for, but it's fun to watch on our side.
It's super interesting to hear you so precisely break down what it is that your pitch shapes are supposed to do, how they complement each other. Because like my impression is that you at the beginning, at kind of the outset of your pitching career, when you were trying to find your way but to have college opportunities, let alone in pro ball, was that you
Yeah.
you started, your baseline was that you were a feel-based pitcher, right? Like you had, like people always, always talked about changeup as being like a changeup guys who threw good changeups being just good feel pitchers. How much, take me back. Like what was it like? Were you just more of an intuitive, like feel-based pitcher? How did you think you were going to forge your path in professional baseball, coming out of some smaller schools?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I didn't hit 90 until my senior year of college. Like, I was having fun, man. And like all of a sudden, April and May of my senior year, it's like, oh, there's some 94s. Oh, there's a 95. Like, that's cool. But even then, I think the best part about like my whole career is that, you know, I I was non-drafted free agent, so there's no expectations for anybody except for myself, really. And so it's like I always hold myself to a very high standard. Like I'm very always my own worst critic, and like which can sometimes be a good thing, sometimes be a bad thing. But like I just think like I just always want more, and um, I think there's been times in my career where it's like I've been very confident in myself, and thinking that I had a chance to make it to the big leagues. But there's also been times where it's like I don't know if I'm in the right place, right? And so like, I think it's just like I said, the only expectations I've had are um, the ones of myself, and just kind of always just trying to do something that set me apart from everybody else, just to try to grab people's attention. Like in 2019, or let's go back to 2018. I went from extended spring training with the A's to released to signed by the Angels. I went there. I went to Low A for one outing. I went back to Arizona. Went to short season in Orem, Utah. Then I had to go fill in High A. And then when that guy got off the IL, I went back to Low A. Well, the next year in 2019, I started in Double A as a starter, and I think it wasn't like a promotion. It was like, hey, like this was pretty much like a sink or swim opportunity. Like this is you're pretty old, but like let's see what you got. And like I took it and ran with it. Like I don't think very many people expected that to happen, um, and it wasn't always pretty. I was on the Phantom IL for like every other week for the first half of the year, but like I eventually earned my own start day, and like I think that was like kind of like a turning point of like just like personally for me, where it's like I can do this. Like didn't work out. Didn't work out being a starter or with the Angels, but um, you know, I think that was just like a huge turning point and like a huge just like testament to like myself, my belief, my mindset, just kind of staying with it and just um, believing in myself when there's not many people like with like the organizations that I was in that maybe did as much as I guess as much as I did myself.
You've also been through a couple of major elbow injuries, right? And we're talking about these, more and more across the industry. Having come out of the last one last year, like, have you thought, and as much as you think about pitching, have you thought about what you need to do to get away from it, right? We talk, a guy's throwing too hard year round. A guy, like, for you personally, going forward, what maybe will be different for you than maybe in the past, whether it's off season or between outings, even in season?
Yeah, I mean, that was unfortunate. Like the one in like the UCL in 2020, I think that was just kind of like an overtime thing. And then last year was a freak thing. Like I I remember like going down there to Andrews with Dr. Dugas in Alabama, and he was like, "Yeah, man, like I see this once like every 4 or 5 years. Like, congratulations, you're the one." But like it was very like reassuring because he told me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, man, like the brace from 2020, like it looks fantastic. Like it looks great." Um, it's like that made me feel good. But I don't feel like anything with it. Like I feel great, and I think just being able to train a little bit better and do a lot more like shoulder stuff and be more precise on my recovery. And just it's been a lot better this year. I think like even in between outings where it's like I'm kind of hanging a little bit, or like having to do a lot just to kind of be ready to go that night for a back to back. Like I don't necessarily feel like I'm having to do as much because like my body in general just feels better, and I think I just have a lot better of a routine kind of than I had. And so it's been good, man. I feel healthy. I feel great.
So Zach, you talk about being in the right place, and obviously, like you've had now some run in the Red Sox organization. You've had kind of these growing opportunities. Last year, as you and I have discussed, it looked like you might have an opportunity early in 2023 to really assert yourself as a major part of the bullpen. The injury came at a terrible time, but you were able to come back from it by the end of the season. This year, ill-timed small injury in spring training slowed you down a little bit at the start, but you've come back into the big leagues hitting the ground running. How much do you feel like you have found the right place? You kind of have time and place lining up right now in a way that is maybe opening up the opportunity that you have been working for in a lot of different places for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I made a joke to somebody in spring training. I was like, "Oh man, it's like my 4th year here. This is my new record." But no, like you said, man, like this organization is great. Like top to bottom, the people, just the history of the organization. Like I can't think of another place I'd rather be. I have so many friends that are just in different organizations, and just talking to them, I'm like, man, like I am glad I'm here. But yeah, like I'm just trying to kind of not so much like solidify myself necessarily, but like I guess like take an extra step. Like I think my goal was for last year to kind of be that year, and it didn't work out. And so like that's kind of one of the things that kind of led to just the so much development in the off season, like really diving, just going all in. Because I didn't think what I had last year I'd be able to do that. So like I said, just kind of reinvent myself and just put myself in a position to kind of take that next step. And like even like you said, the oblique in spring training, like that was unfortunate. Um, and like I think it was kind of like not necessarily like a good thing, but like almost like a something for me where it's like, all right, relax, like because like I felt like I was just trying to do way too much my first couple outings of spring training. Like I wasn't commanding the zone. I was trying to just see how much I can make the ball move, and like just kind of trying to do too much. It was like I felt like I was trying to sit there and make the team in February, and that's just not realistic. So it kind of gave me opportunities to like slow down and like kind of process everything and just like almost reset a little bit. And like it's unfortunate that it took as long as it did, and I wasn't able to break camp with the team in Seattle. But I didn't really miss any time in the season, and my first few outings in Worcester still felt like a little bit of a build up from spring training. Like I pitched on March the 2nd, and then I get option, and I think the next day I threw an inning in like a Greenville backfield game. I think it was the day that Chase got there. I threw after him, and so like, from opening day in Lehigh Valley, from March 2nd to the opening day in Lehigh Valley, I only got one inning in. So my first few outings in Worcester were I didn't have my legs under me completely, but it took me a few outings to kind of get back to where I was going, and just trying to feel like I'm not trying to do like I guess too much to get back here, and like obviously the circumstances that it took to get me recalled aren't what you want, but it's just the way the game works, and like hopefully Mayo gets back here next week or whenever that day is, and but I think just all in all, just kind of understanding what all I need to do, and that I don't need to do, I guess, so much to be successful and just trust myself and trust my stuff.
Well, it's been fun to watch so far. You're off to a great start, and we get to talk a lot of baseball, not a lot of hockey, which is probably good. As a Caps fan, I mean, So, do you embrace the Bruins?
Actually,
no, yeah. Alex actually has some Caps credentials of his own.
Yeah, I grew up in the DC area, so yeah, I used to go to the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland when I was growing up because I had some friends who were season tickets, which is that was a haul, that was a terrible location. But so I'm dating myself. We were making fun of ourselves before the show for the fact that TC and I are old. Do you remember the Capitals fight song? Did you ever hear it growing up? I'm going to play it for you. It was a sweet. It was a sweet synthesizer heavy song. It was very impressive.
You're not old enough to have ever gone to the. Yeah, you never went to the Cap Center, did you, Zach?
I don't think I did.
The old, it was awful. So I was actually the minor league play-by-play announcer of the Caps team in Portland, Maine, when they were the AHL affiliate of the Capitals. So yeah, this could be a Caps podcast, but yeah, for a while they're not anymore. But no one would listen if this was a Caps podcast, so we won't go there.
See, it's like tug of war because I'm a Caps fan, but all my social media is just filled with Bruin stuff. So it's I'm kind of seeing myself paying attention more to the Bruins than I do the Caps. I wore my Marchand jersey to the field the other day. I think they won that.
That's
game,
some serious cred.
I didn't wear it. I didn't wear it yesterday, so that one might be on me.
Oops. Yeah, you got to wear it before Game 6, please. Okay.
Yeah, you got ragdolled to the ice and got offsetting Myers
See, I told Billy Jaffe. I told Billy Jaffe, our studio analyst, they should have you in as an analyst because you can talk the game. You know what you're talking about.
And well-versed in podcasts, so I feel like you're a natural for cross-sport analysis.
Yeah, you and Tyler O'Neill should do a hockey podcast.
Me and T.O. Hockey's my favorite sport. I love it.
Tell T.O. there are easier ways to look like a hockey player than 8 stitches above the eye. Okay, you just wear a Marchand jersey like you. It's a lot easier. It's a lot less painful.
I know. Gotta stick
Listen,
to
stick to the jerseys. Zach, we appreciate the visit. It was fun. Continued success. It's always fun watching you reinvent yourself and succeed at the major league level. Keep it up.
Appreciate it. Good talking to you guys too.
All right, Alex. So it really is fascinating to hear, just how pitch by pitch in the offseason a pitcher is looking up at the data as he tries to refine himself. I don't think fans realize the kind of specific lab work that these pitchers are diving into now in off seasons.
It is crazy how much the game has flipped around in the course of the last, I would say around the Red Sox, the last 6 years, where you have this iterative process where those video boards are right behind them in bullpen sessions in spring training, and they're looking with every pitch at times for spin and for movement and for velocity. Of course, it's a very different pace at which pitchers are trying to change. It's less organic, I think. It's less feel-based, and it is much more scientific. And it helps to explain why you basically see, stuff that looks like video game stuff all over baseball right now, because the ability to precisely say, change the grip like this, change the seam orientation like this, and you'll be able to get X more inches of movement. That's real, and pitcher after pitcher is employing it in a way that makes hitting an awfully miserable undertaking for a lot of guys.
And we're seeing across the boards, guys are injured now, but even the guys who's Tanner Houck has really refined a lot of what he's doing. Cutter Crawford, who was such a good four-seam guy, though, you see the mix now varying a little more start to start. These guys are all really changing who they are, and I think they are now enabled, even young pitchers, to change their mix from pitch to pitch with more confidence and from outing to outing with more confidence than they ever have before.
And I'll say that with the Red Sox, I think that a large part of it is the emphasis on strengths, right? Like the pitchers this year are pitching less. Their game planning has less to do with the weaknesses of opponents that might take pitchers towards their own weaknesses, and it's focused more on what they do exceptionally well. So that's why you see Tanner Houck throwing a bazillion sliders. And now that he's become comfortable with his splitter, that's part of the mix as well. Obviously, the sinker has always been a bread and butter pitch for him, but they took away the four seamer. They want him to emphasize the things that he does really well instead of pitching to other teams' weaknesses. So there are a number of factors that play into it, but the open-mindedness of pitchers to saying, okay, what are we going to do differently? Like, what do I do well? And how do we leverage that? How do we use that in the context of a game? How do we continue to develop that in a way that it becomes even more overwhelming to another team? That open-mindedness is very real. And the dynamics of the game have changed a lot.
By the way, not sure if you caught this the other day, but we may have created a nickname. Autocorrect changes Cutter to Butter whenever I go out on Twitter. And so Butter Crawford is the end result of this. And a lot of people, and of course I don't proofread. Unlike you, I don't proofread my work, Alex. So I just fired that into the Twitter sphere, the X sphere, whatever we call it. And so it's gotten back to Butter, and he kind of likes it. Why not? Yeah, he's smooth as butter. It's not a negative, right? So I guess he'll take it.
I think that there's actually a real problem with the dearth of nicknames that exists in baseball right now. Like Cutter Crawford has less reason to be viewed as guilty of that than most because his name works really well for a pitcher. But I really think that we do need to cultivate more. I actually was trying to sell him on the idea that because of his pitching motion, he might want to start like having people call him the Raptor, like with that little short arm movement, drawing it back. But Butter is kind of, who doesn't like Butter?
Well, I know, when I used to tweet or write Brock Holt, it would autocorrect to Holy, Holy, and he really enjoyed that. He thought that was a great autocorrect. So we'll let autocorrect come up with our nicknames. All right, we don't have a ton of time. Let's get to our stat of the week. Stats Masterson, do you have one for us this week?
Sure, by all means. Let's see. This is delivered in very elegant fashion. So one thing that we're seeing, one reason why the Red Sox have been so good at this stage of the season relates to the fact that their offensive approach has been effective in maximizing the ability of guys, mostly by really mauling first pitches. They have a 1,130 OPS against first pitches, which is the second best in baseball. They're also second in home runs and extra base hits on first pitches. So even though this isn't a lineup that we're used to seeing, the approach has allowed them to really keep opposing pitching staffs on the defensive.
Great stuff. I like this one. I found one on Connor Wong. Last year, his slugging percentage was .385. After the Giants series, it was up to .595 this season. That's an increase of 210 points, which is by far and away the largest increase in slugging percentage of any hitter in Major League Baseball, which is why you're seeing Connor Wong bat fifth, bat fourth, bat sixth, middle of the lineup bat now, and it hasn't slowed him down at all.
Hugely important development for the Red Sox as they do try to account for the absence of so many of the guys who are relied on for the slug in their lineup.
What did they give up for him? It wasn't much. I don't remember Connor Wong. It turned out to be, they got Connor Wong. Let's just say that. Connor Wong has turned out well. We don't have a lot of time left. However, we would be remiss in not talking about this sausage thing that's going on in Minnesota. Rocco Baldelli has like a hazmat situation. But that's baseball, right? If you keep winning and you've got how old? Like it's like a 3-week-old package of sausage, right?
It's becoming. You wonder, like, is this thing a biohazard? That was Rocco Baldelli's primary concern. But you also wonder if the Twins have built up an immunity to whatever kinds of bacteria this sausage arguably is causing. I know that there have been some deep investigative reports suggesting that this very used, wilted package of sausage is not dangerous, but Rocco doubts that, and it's. I wonder if other teams are like, if a bunch of guys on the Red Sox end up being sick coming out of Minnesota, we'll know the culprit.
See, and that's concerning, right? Because Vaughn Grissom is just coming back from the flu. It was racking its way through the Woo Sox clubhouse, and now you got to go not only face the Twins, but you got to deal with the sausage. This could be troublesome.
It's an imposing combination, certainly, and I think that it's the Minnesota Sausage Fest has been a real development of the early part of the season.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. That was another edition. We'll be back next week. Can we confidently give away who we expect to have next week? Do you have a high level of confidence in this?
I feel pretty good that we're going to be talking to Andrew Bailey about what's been happening across the board with the Red Sox pitching staff. So seems timely.
There you go, the architect of this incredible pitching run. Let's hope there's not any jinx applied as there was to Zack Kelly, and that this doesn't become
or
a thing.
dangerous cured beats.
If he survives the weekend around the cured meat, he will join us on Monday. Alex, it was fun again. Let's do it again next week, shall we?
Sounds great.
Alex Speier over there. Again, I did it on the wrong side. Alex Speier over there. I'm Tom Carrot over here. This was 310 to left. We'll talk to you next week.